We remember Princess Diana 24 years after her tragic death, as Kristen Stewart transforms into Lady Di in the new film Spencer.
They know everything. They don't.
We break down the new epilogue to the Finding Freedom book, from their tell-all interview to Meghan's pregnancy to their relationship with the royal family.
I think it must be incredibly difficult to try and have those conversations because they must always be a bit worried about what Meghan and Harry are going to reveal to the press, or in a press stunt, or in a new revised version of the book, or even in Prince Harry's own book.
Plus, a royal move. William and Kate may be considering a move to Windsor Castle. We tell you why.
Moving closer to the Queen and closer to bring the whole sort of nuclear family a little bit closer together.
We've got that plus so much more in today's Royally Us. Hello to our fellow royal lovers and welcome to Royally Us. I'm Christina. Molly Mulshine is on vacation this week, so we are joined by our guest co-host, royal commentator Jonathan Sacerdoti. Hi, Jonathan. How are you?
Hi, Christina. I'm good, thanks. How are you? It's great to be with you.
It's great to be with you, and it's great to be back. I've been on maternity leave for 12 weeks, and I want to give a huge shout out to Joe Drake, who has been filling in for me for the past 12 weeks. He did a fabulous job, so thank you, Joe. But I'm so excited to be back and get right back into all the royal news. We have so much to cover today. Obviously, this week marks the 24th anniversary of Princess Diana's death. We have a new epilogue of Finding Freedom that we have to break down. But before we get to all of that, we want to check in with our royal viewers who had a lot to say about last week's show. So kicking it off with Susan, who says, Stuart, who was our guest last week, Stuart Pierce, you are so right about Prince Harry and Prince William. They are very different. Give them a chance to solve their differences between themselves. I mean, do you think that's the right thing to do, that they need to follow figure things out for themselves and not have everybody kind of analyze every single move that they make?
Well, first off, welcome back, because you've been doing the hardest job in the world the last few weeks.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And, we talk about families a lot here on Royally Us, and you know exactly what it's like with a new baby and what have you. So these royals go through the same things. And right now they're going through another thing that loads of us go through, which is an argument inside the family. Sometimes that takes a long time to iron out, I think. So I do think it's true that we should leave them alone to get on with it as much as possible and not second guess every twist and turn, because it must be even harder for them, don't you think, with everyone watching?
Oh, 100%. If everybody was watching my every move and how, my interactions with my family, it would be a whole big thing too, I would imagine. But next one goes to Frankendall, says, oh, I adore Stuart. I can listen to him all day long. And Monticello says, do we really see Camilla curtsying to Kate or Charles bowing down to William? Now, I think that this was in regards to a report that, Charles may step aside and give William the throne. I don't see that happening.
I don't think it's likely. I mean, Prince Charles has been waiting a really long time for that, aside from the curtsying. I think, it's his turn, and I think that's just how these things go.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree with you more. All right, well, Jonathan, let's get into our royal roundup and kick it off. Like we said, it's been 24 years since Princess Diana's tragic death at the age of just 36. And so how are people in the UK remembering Princess Diana on the death of her, on the anniversary of her death?
I don't think anyone ever really forgot Princess Diana, and so it seems amazing that much time has passed. I can remember the day it happened, waking up and seeing it on the TV and the news then unfolding. And, there was a massive reaction in the UK. Some people were quite perplexed by quite how big the reaction was. There was that sea of flowers, and there was just this feeling of overriding sadness. Some called it hysteria, because ultimately she was a much loved member of the family by the public, and she was somebody people looked up to, but she was also somebody people didn't really know personally. And I think what's amazing is the amount to which people did feel they knew her. Of course, people who'd never met her. Harry even mentioned it recently when he's been talking about the effect it had on him, and his grieving, that so many people who'd never even met her seemed sadder than he was as he had to walk behind her in that funeral cortege. So I think the public is mixed as it was then, and nothing's really changed. Some people absolutely loved Diana and remember her with the same sadness today as they did back then.
Oh, definitely. I remember seeing videos and images of people, literally crying in the streets, weeping, wailing in the streets, learning of her death. And it still seems like even 24 years later, we're talking about her not more than ever, but just as much, I would imagine. You know, we had the statue unveiling over the summer to mark her, what would have been her 60th birthday. You know, we have this film with Kristen Stewart coming out in a couple of weeks, which we'll talk about a little bit later. You know, The Crown has been centered all around her. We've had all these documentaries. It seems like, you know, we're still like a new generation of people are getting to know her each and every, you know, few years.
And I think that's right. I think back in the day, you could make sure a magazine sold by putting a picture of her on the front cover. And it seems like nothing's changed. I mean, a whole blockbuster movie based on a few days of her life. These sorts of things are enormous. And then, of course, all the rumors that Meghan is trying to become today's Diana and carefully looking at the things she did and trying to mirror them. So it just shows you what an enormous influence she was in people's lives, including in the royal family itself.
Yeah. Do you really feel like Meghan is kind of taking a page out of Diana's book and kind of mirroring things that she did? And do you feel, how do you feel like she's doing that?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if that's what she's doing, because there were things about Diana which many people saw as very positive within the royal family. And then as she left the royal family, you know, after this messy divorce, she really tried to use her position and her fame to promote not only herself, but also causes and charities around the world. There's those famous image of her with the HIV patients or walking through a landmine area for the landmine charity. These are really positive things she was trying to do, positive images. So I think if Meghan does want to emulate that, it's quite understandable. And I think that she is showing herself as somebody who, at least in her head, is pursuing worthy goals around the world and trying to elevate certain causes to a level where we're all aware of them, just as Diana did. And she's getting the same criticism Diana did from some quarters for doing that, because there are people who say that both of them might have been also thinking about their own image a bit more than the causes they were claiming to represent.
Right, definitely. All right, well, we're going to talk more about Princess Diana and Kristen Stewart's take on her a little bit later, but first we want to get into this new epilogue of Finding Freedom. Of course, the book was released a few months ago, and we devoured it, and a lot of people had a lot to say about it, but now there's some new chapters, and we're learning some new things that have happened since they gave that tell-all interview a few months back. So what surprised you the most in this new epilogue?
I'm going to be a bit of a stick in the mud and say what surprised me the most is how little there was in there that was actually new. I mean, there was loads of stuff kind of bringing everything back to the surface. And if all of these sores had started to heal, well, this book's certainly trying to rip them open again and pour some salt in while they're at it. But in the end, there were these kind of little repeats of some of the stuff. There were bits of extra gossip and conjecture about the things that we've been talking about since that interview and since the book was released, but I don't think there was a massive amount of new information. And so that was perhaps the surprise, that it was re-released like this on this important anniversary moment as well. And yet what was in there, you know, a bit of new gossip, but not a huge amount more. Right.
What was some of the new gossip that kind of stood out to you a little bit?
Well, I think that some of the stuff that came out there was here's the thing. I think that Meghan and Harry say that it's not authorized or official, and so it's not fair to take it as their word. But at the same time, the authors clearly have a very close relationship to certain people who know what those two are thinking, and quotes friends of theirs and sources close to them. And those people are unlikely to speak with the authors of a book like that if it's not with the approval of the people the book's about. And so I think people do assume that it's unofficial, but a bit official. And so the stuff that perhaps surprised me and the stuff that's coming out of there that's new is this idea that they're dragging up that racism allegation again that they made, saying that the palace didn't take ownership of the issue and that was something that was remarkable to them. I think that was a new nugget that's come out, and then dragging that back up again. And then there were bits and pieces about, you know, what they've done over the years since it's been released. I mean, there were also things about the big interview that they did and how their timing was around it, how they decided when to do it, how they felt about it, and the fact that they thought about naming the person that they alleged was racist in the family. I mean, as bits of news go, announcing that you thought about doing something that you didn't do is a little bit strange, but hey, it's selling magazines and papers and books, apparently.
Right. Yeah. And we're talking about it,
Oh, yeah.
Right. They did say that they decided to do the tell-all interview, pretty much the same day that she found out that her Mail on Sunday lawsuit was decided. So, as soon as that was done, she got on the phone and was like, I'm ready to speak. And Meghan said that she felt very, I felt
it was cathartic, she said.
Yes,
that's what they said.
Was...
And I have to say, the thing about that bit stuck out to me. So they said they waited for the timing because of the court case with the Mail. And of course, that court case with the Mail was all about one of the things that we hear from them a lot, that they feel their privacy is invaded and intruded upon. That was about a letter that Meghan Markle's estranged father had, and he released to the paper some of the words that she had said in the letter. And she then made a copyright claim, I think it was, against the newspaper for publishing it. Now, that's fine. That kind of squares with their image of wanting privacy and wanting the press to go away. But then they waited until that court case was finished, and the very moment it was, they decided to go and do this massive interview that was then televised around the world. Those two things don't really sit well together for me and for loads of people. That's not someone looking for privacy. That's someone waiting for their privacy-related court case to end and then jumping straight back into the spotlight.
Yeah, the timing was a little bit interesting, to say the least. And they also talk about, Prince Harry flying back for Prince Philip's funeral. And obviously there was a lot of tension with the family. This was the first time he's really seen them. There was some reports that he had sent a letter to Prince Charles before that, but they say in the book that did not happen. But they did have a brief conversation while he was there.
Yeah, and also they say that several members of the royal family were understood to have been quite pleased that Meghan stayed in California because they didn't want a circus or they didn't want the Duchess creating what they called a spectacle. So that's quite, I suppose that is quite explosive as a claim, but again, not that surprising. I think who of us didn't know that perhaps the royal family didn't want Meghan there after everything that had been going on. And in a funeral for somebody so much loved, not just in the family, by the Queen herself and by the nation as well. You can remember that funeral, it was actually very poignant because of how small it was, and yet it had all that pomp and circumstance that surrounds royal family events. It was spectacular to watch and very moving, even for people who aren't particularly royalists.
Right.
And I think the distraction of having Meghan there, who wasn't that close to the Duke of Edinburgh as far as we can tell, because she hadn't even been in the family that long. Not saying that to disrespect her. It's just how it was. So given, I think it was 30 or something people were allowed to be there, I'm not surprised that Meghan wasn't necessarily high up on the list of guests, and I think they did the right thing for her to stay home. And of course, also there was the baby,
of course.
I think that issue meant it would have been pretty much impossible anyway for her to go.
Definitely. And then where do they say that everybody kind of stands right now? I know Harry had a moment with the Queen while he was there, and, maybe he's trying to repair those relationships. Obviously, he had the huge rift with his brother, but it seems like things are kind of, from where we were a year ago, starting to get a little bit more back on track.
Yeah, well, Prince William, according to the book, Private Family Matters were being discussed in the public domain. And it's unlikely, I guess, that he's going to comment more on it other than what he said at the time, that they're very much not a racist family. That was an answer he gave to someone from the press when at a public event just afterwards. But, emotions, they say in the book, are still raw. And I guess that's not surprising that they're still raw, because quite some allegations going back and forth. But yes, of course, over the year, there must have been some discussion, some sort of attempt at reconciliation. But I keep saying that, it's speculation. I'm not party to their private conversations, but I think it must be incredibly difficult to try and have those conversations, because they must always be a bit worried about what Meghan and Harry are going to reveal to the press, or in a press stunt, or in a new revised version of the book, or even in Prince Harry's own book. So I think that there's perhaps a nervousness on the part of the royal family to say too much and to make too great an effort to reconcile, even though I'm sure that they'd want to, if only for PR purposes, never mind for family peace.
Sure. You make a really good point. Like, and you say, emotions are raw, and now they're going to be, kind of brought to light again with this new epilogue and things like that. But you do make a point, like, can I trust you when I have these conversations that you're not going to run back and divulge our family secrets even more? So we'll kind of wait and see what happens. Like you mentioned Prince Harry's book as well, which, we can't wait to read. But
and the last bit that I think was just like a real corker, like real surprise to me, was when they asked them when the book said, did they have any regrets over the last year, Meghan and Harry? And amazingly, the answer is no, they don't. I'm not sure if that comes directly from the horse's mouth. As we said, they don't attribute things to direct conversations with the couple. But they said that as difficult as the recent years have been, sources close to the Sussexes say that neither Harry nor Meghan have any regrets about the decisions they've made. I mean, really? No regrets about cutting off Thomas Markle because of those photos with the paparazzi, like literally cutting him off from ever meeting his grandchildren? No regrets about what they said about Prince Charles cutting them off from money, even though it's been shown not to be quite how they said it was? No regrets about saying that the Archbishop of Canterbury married them secretly beforehand, even though he came out and said he didn't? No regrets about any of these issues that have been so incendiary in Britain and the royal family, and now are starting to have many people, even in the States, turn against them a bit. I can't believe they've got no regrets. I mean, don't you have some regrets over your last year? I certainly have a few.
Totally. I have a ton of regrets. You got some time? We'll list them all.
Exactly. I mean, who doesn't have some regrets about how they conducted themselves with their family over the last year and what have you? To me, it shows quite a supreme degree of, I don't know, self-certainty, or you might even say arrogance, to say that there's no regrets. That really, I suppose, if going back to what you asked me before, that's the biggest surprise to me. And yet it's not a surprise, because it kind of fits with the way they've done things. They do tend to behave like they know what they're doing and everything is carefully planned. And so maybe there are no regrets. Maybe this is how they wanted it to go.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Who knows if what keeps them up at night? Maybe we'll never know, or maybe he'll, like we said, he'll tell us all in his next book. But let's move on to Spill the Royal Tea, because the Mail on Sunday is actually reporting that William and Kate may be moving closer to Windsor Castle. And this is interesting because I think, or they're saying that if they make the move closer to Windsor Castle, they're going to take on even more responsibility because they're going to be so close to the Queen.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it makes sense what they're doing, because over the years, there's been a sort of shift in the workload from the Queen to other members of the working royal family. And I think that shift has been partly because of her age. Obviously, it's going to be harder for her to do quite as much as she always used to. And as well, it's a way of preparing the next generations, because remember, there's two adult heirs now. There's Prince Charles and there's Prince William. Both of them are really learning how to do the job they'll one day have to do by helping the Queen and lightening her load a little bit. So I think that this move might be partly connected to that, as you say, moving closer to the Queen and closer to bring the whole sort of nuclear family a little bit closer together.
Do you think that this is actually going to happen, or do you think that this is kind of like years in the making, maybe?
That I don't know. I mean, it could be, and it's interesting that the paper, said that this was something they're thinking of. Obviously, remember as well that things have changed because of circumstances. The Queen has been more or less confined to Windsor Castle for a massive amount of time because of COVID, and she moved there sort of semi-permanently. So it's definitely something that would make sense if they do go ahead and do it. At the moment, they're living between two addresses. One is Kensington Palace, their official address, and the other one is Hall, which is in Norfolk. It's on the Queen Sandringham estate. She gifted them that place actually for their wedding, and it was their official residence from 2015 to 2017. And of course, if they live in Windsor, it's going to be easier for them to get to and from London than from Amner Hall. So that could be another reason that they're thinking about moving there.
We'll have to wait and see. All right. Well, now it is time to break down the royal rules. And like we said, it's hard to believe it's been 24 years since Princess Diana died. And now we have gotten our first look at Kristen Stewart in action as Princess Diana. Take a look at the trailer for Spencer.
Just waiting for you.
They know everything. They don't.
All right. So what was your first reaction when you saw this trailer?
Well, on the one hand, wow.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, oh, that. Because let's face it, we watched The Crown and it kind of looks the same as all the Diana stuff we saw in The Crown. Even the scene of her shut in the bathroom and the knocking on the door. I mean, I feel like I've seen it already. So it's exciting, but maybe not as exciting as they wanted it to be. And I think my initial reaction as well, I hope this isn't going to get me too much hate in the comments again, is that, you know, if you like the royals and if you like Diana, isn't it a bit sad that actually there's this movie that's focusing on, guess what, disaster, Diana as a symbol of sadness and tragedy, because she is in many people's minds a symbol of triumph over disaster and a symbol of doing these special things she did to break down social barriers and to promote charities, and even in her very last year or two, to promote herself as finally being able to have fun on a yacht with the son of a billionaire and finally being able to break free from those shackles that this film seems really keen to remind us tied her down in the first place.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's kind of what, you know, where we are in The Crown too. It's kind of focusing on those dark times of her life and not all of the triumphs that she had and not all the good times that she had, especially with her sons and things like that too. And this just takes place over the course of 3 days, correct? And it's not really based on facts. This is, they are taking a lot of liberties with this movie.
No, that's right. So it's based on a sort of 3-day period somewhere in the early 90s, apparently, looking at this 3 days sort of around Christmas Day, when Diana is with the rest of the royal family for the Christmas celebrations. I think it's in Sandringham, the Queen's estate. And the idea is, I suppose, to show her misery and her sort of starting to realize that she's her own person and breaking away from that. And that's even symbolized by the name of the film as well, Spencer, very noticeably her family name from before she. So I think that's quite a statement as well. And again, you know, asked about it, it was said by those making it to be a sort of poetic internal imagining of what might have been going on, what it might have felt like, rather than necessarily giving us any new information. Because frankly, is there any left? I mean, it's a long time ago, and this has been very, very widely covered.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of Kristen Stewart? I mean, I know we only heard her say 2 words, but what did you think of her British accent? What did you think of her speaking like Princess Diana? Does she nail it?
Well, as you said, like 2 words, I think I mean, she sounded kind of British and posh, but then so do I. So I'm not sure anyone would say I sound like Princess Diana for that. I mean, you give it a go. See how you could do a 2-word Diana.
I don't. I don't think I could do it.
Well, I think, listen, I want to be charitable and say it sounded good. Let's hope it sounds good for the rest of the movie too. Yeah. And I think also there was that, the interesting thing I noticed as well is that some of the costumes, like there's that stunning dress in the poster. It's a very striking poster, but it's been slightly modernized. It's like a dress of Diana's that's been slightly changed for a modern sensibility. I think that's what we're going to see in the whole film, is that it's kind of a bit of Diana's story, but reimagined for the modern sensibility. And that gown shown in that poster, I think, is similar to a Victor Edelstein that she wore on a solo trip to New York in 1989. It's also quite like the gown I wore to my nephew's bar mitzvah, but we'll talk about that another time. No, in all seriousness, I suspect it was based on that New York one. And it just reminds us as well, she was a fashion icon. And I think by tweaking it to make it modern, they're kind of trying to show that she's timeless and has a resonance even with today's audience too. So I suspect that's what we'll be seeing throughout. And as you mentioned to me before we were on today, I think a few people said it reminded them of a particularly disastrous Oscars moment.
Yes, a little Jennifer Lawrence falling up the stairs to collect her Oscar. A lot of people were saying, because she was wearing the beautiful white long dress, and a lot of people were comparing those two moments, which I thought was pretty funny.
It looks just like it, I reckon. Actually, when you said that to me, I went and Googled it, because I was like, oh yeah, she fell over, didn't she? And then I was like, wow, it's literally like a freeze frame.
It really is.
I don't think they meant that to happen. But
no, anyway. I don't think so either. But what do you think, Diana, if Diana was alive today, what do you think that she would be feeling about, the movie Spencer, about how she's depicted in The Crown? Because you made a good point before that people are focusing so much on the dark times of her life. How do you think that she would feel about all of this?
Yeah. By the way, I would say I didn't really wear a dress to my nephew's bar mitzvah.
I didn't think
so that's not quite my style. But I think that Diana would probably be grateful that she's still in everyone's minds. She said famously that she wanted to be queen in people's hearts. When she made that decision to leave Prince Charles, who is going to be king, she effectively resigned from a future role of being queen or consort. So I think that she would probably be pleased that her memory is still alive for so many people, and that it's done in a sensitive and sympathetic way. But as I said, I think perhaps it's a shame. I can't say how she would feel about it, but I think it's a shame that we're remembering her so much for tragedy and sadness, not only because it's a bit self-indulgent, really, that we're just wallowing in this sadness, which I think is a bit of a modern problem, wallowing in a bit of victimhood. But I think that because really Diana's own attempts were to be quite a force for good and positivity, and I think it would be a shame just to remember tragedy, though perhaps that is what she's most famous for. Perhaps this is the first draft of history that says, yeah, forget the stuff that she thought she was doing well, good deeds and things. She's going to be remembered as this symbol of sadness.
I hope not. But we're going to see how, how the movie kind of plays out and how people react to it. It's going to be premiering at the Venice Film Festival in a week or so. And then I think it's in theaters in November. So we'll definitely recap that all once we see it. But let's move on to our royal history moment of the week, lighten things up a little bit, because Queen Elizabeth is being credited by creating her own dog breed, which I think is pretty cool.
Yep, exactly. They're called dorgies, which isn't just a queen-like way of saying the word doggies. Dorgies. It's actually a cross between a dachshund and a corgi. We all know she likes corgis, but apparently, so the story goes, Princess Margaret's dachshund Pipkin was a bit of a rogue and had his way with one of the Queen's corgis, and bingo, there we have a dorgie.
You got a dorgie.
A dorgie, of course. But that's the Queen was ahead of her time, perhaps, because now we have all these fashionable crossbreeds, cockapoos and things like that, labradoodles, and there we are. The Queen apparently has been creating dorgies for some time.
Who knew? Who knew? I absolutely love it. All right. Well, before we wrap up, we have to check in on our royal kids. And this week, Prince Charles detailed a fun tradition that he has started with his grandson, Prince George. I love this. It's all about, Prince Charles is all about nature and climate change and things like that. So he's getting his grandson hands dirty by planting some trees, right?
That's right, and he's planting these trees, I think, with the idea that in the future it'll be like a forest for him as he grows up. I think there's an old Chinese proverb that the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago, but the second best time is right now. So I think Prince Charles is proving that, and again, it gives a little sense not just of his passion for nature and the environment, but also his forward-looking nature. He won't always be around, but these trees that he's planting will be for his grandson and for the whole of the of the country, for the future of the nation.
Definitely. I like that tradition. I think it's a good tradition for a lot of grandparents to start with their grandkids. I really like it a lot. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for stepping in to guest host with me this week. It was absolutely a pleasure, and you made my first episode back absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
The pleasure's been all mine. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. Make sure to check back with Royally Us every Wednesday on Us Weekly's YouTube channel, and we will see you guys next week.